Hey everybody, it's Loki Jen coming from Casa del Loki with an update on the greenhouse seed feeding powder. Now the system lights are off right now. I'd show you that, and I didn't think about it till now. But aside from a little bit of growth spurting, there's really not much to see. They are working pretty well. I have noticed that I'm having to keep a little more tabs on the pH, simply because, as it runs through the system, it oxygenates, and when it oxygenates, it becomes a little bit alkaline. And you know with a system like this, you really have to pay attention to that. So make sure that if you are going to be running a full hydro system like that you have a TDS, ppm, or EC meter to make sure that you know how much nutrients is in there. And I personally would suggest using the Litmus chemicals. um, you can use white vinegar to lower your pH to something a little more acidic, and you can use hydrogen peroxide to increase it should you overshoot your mark and hit like a 4.0 on your pH for your water. So those are two little inexpensive ways to avoid having to spend money on little bottles that, aside from the alkaline one, which I really don't put too much effort in that, because you can always just add more tap water, which is anywhere between 7 to 8. So if it gets too alkaline, that's what I prefer to do instead of adding a chemical, a lye base or something like that. So yeah, white vinegar distilled 3% is good for new cultivators to hydroponics. Simply because it's only 3% hydrochloric acid, and the rest is water. It's very benign stuff that we eat, so it's okay, it's safe. You can even get it on your hands. But you can go up to 5 or 10%. Now, 5% you might find in a culinary supply store, but the 10% and higher you would have to go to other places. Beauty supplies tend to have them, actually. It's used in bleaching hair. So back when I used to change my hair color as often as my clothes, that's what we used. But yeah, aside from that, the feeding powder seems to be working extremely well. I have noticed a couple things, and maybe it was just miscommunication, lost in translation, or I made the mistake, which it's probably very likely I made the mistake. I'm used to running a system to where I can drop the clones directly in and give her a couple of weeks at a low dose of nutrients for vegging. The more I looked into how this product is formulated, I made a mistake by using the flowering powder, the short flowering powder, instead of using like the mothering or the mother feeding solution or the veg. It didn't inhibit the growth, it just kind of kept it very compact, and I kind of like them to shoot up a little bit so I can super crop the stalks and sog it, give it some girth so that there's enough nutrients being taken up to feed my flowers. So I rectified that situation, and since then they've been responding extremely well. I think what threw me off was that on the package it said feeding powder for mother plants. That's great, but if you just break it down to your normal cultivation techniques, weighing out the amount is not necessary when you are using an EC or a TDS or ppm meter, because ideally if you're using a hydro system, you know just about how much you need to give them so that they are well fed and not overfed. So, you know, I still follow the directions, but I'll adjust it using my TDS and EC meter. And yeah, so if I had just looked at the package like you would normally do when you are replenishing the nutrients in your tanks, um, you would see that the way the chemical breakdown, the NPK, as well as trace nutrients breakdown, they're set up very specifically. Now, I guess my carelessness, I overlooked that without thinking because I was so used to products kind of being very broad-based. This is turning out to be very specific to the point that uh, if I had read the nutrient scale and took away the whole idea of the feeding powder by Greenhouse and just looked at the NPK ratings as well as trace nutrients, I would see that, you know, the feeding powder from other plants is perfect for the vegetative cycle in a hydro grow. Now, I haven't applied this to organics or cocoa coir, soilless mixes, sunshine mix, stuff like that. But I do have a protege that is doing that testing for me. He has good organics, plus we are setting him up to do cocoa coir, in which we're going to use these products on that too. Ideally, we're going to try and document it, but I can't guarantee it if I'm not going to be there doing it. So I'll get as much as I can, and hopefully the rest will be brought to me by this other individual. So as far as the Greenhouse Seed Company feeding powder being, you know, it's effective so far. It's working well. The plants are responding well. You just have to take a little extra time, like when House and Garden first came out. You need to just kind of break it down mathematically and logically as to what the plants may or may need. Now, of course, this is for an upper intermediate to advanced cultivator. If you don't understand most of what I was just talking about, I would suggest, you know, honing your skills a little bit more with organics before delving into the AquaWorks or the hydro, aereo, aquaponic setups, deep water culture, NFTs, so forth and so on. But for those canologists out there that are running hydro systems and you are interested in this, yeah, that's I guess the negative parts of it that I have found. The positive parts that I've found, um, the system stays clean. My pumps don't get clogged as often because of the type of system I use. I haven't noticed any major algae growth or anything like that. The circulating pumps, I do put filters in just simply, you know, as a precaution. But I haven't had to clean them as often as I normally would, and I'm sure you guys understand what I'm talking about. So it's actually doing very well as far as keeping that system clean. The aeroponic system that I was using didn't have a problem, not even with the finer misters. So you could ideally use, you know, a pump that doesn't need to be necessarily as strong with a finer mist. And I know that there are products that are being sold on the internet that do just that. And they tend not to perform as well because, you know, sometimes the nutrients clogs up the finer holes on the sprayers, the diameter of the exit points. So there's some perks there on the feeding powder that I've found. Aside from simple use, and it pretty much dissolves within 60 seconds into any tank that's circulating. If it's just going into a static tank, you might give it a couple stirs, but it works very well. It has no odor, no discernible odor that I can see. And like I said, um, I do keep my reservoir nutrient tanks blocks from the light, and they are ran through tubes that are in a sealed system, but they do ebb and flow into the buckets, and in which case a lot of times, you know, you can get algae growth developing um, on the top parts of the medium, which is not uncommon. I have yet to see this. So what I'll do is I'll add a few still shots showing you, the medium itself, and kind of how clean it is, and you will definitely see what I meant by the differences between the short flowering cycles and then the vegetative one that's in a green bag that I really should have, just recognized. Usually the ones for veg are green, so that's just for people out there who may not have caught that kind of little joke, I guess. So I did switch it up. Aside from excessive flower growth, not bud production, but flower growth and compact internodal spacing, it was still vegging, but I left one for you guys. What I did is and I do this normally, I just didn't have to do it to the extent that I had to do to these ones. But I usually trim all that up because having started straight from rooted clones into the system, they're still rather small, several inches tall. Um, but you'll see where where the nutrients was off on my mistake, which kind of put me back maybe about 2 weeks or so before I corrected it. And they've responded quite well to it. So yeah, I'll throw in some still shots of that, and you'll see what happened when I was just using the short flower feeding powder by Greenhouse Seed Company, and then when I finally realized my mistake and switched out the system and cleaned off the lower branches. Now the one that you'll see, like I said, I left just for you guys so that I could take the picture. Because if I can't document the mistakes, then you won't know. You can't have anything to compare it to. But then I'll show you what I do afterwards to help push vertical growth. At this point, what I'm looking for is vertical growth moreover than the branching. And I'll explain why once we get to that point where I can start super cropping, manipulating, and setting up the scrub nets. So until then, keep fighting the good fight, everybody. I'm out there trying, but the weather's been bad, and with surgeries coming up, I'm going to have a hard time being out there myself, but I will still use this powerful tool here, internet, YouTube, Google Plus, and all the other wonderful social sites and friends I have out there. I just might be out of commission with a few surgeries. Bone grafts scare me. But you know what? We do what we got to do. So happy gardening, everybody. This is Loki Jen from Casa del Loki, giving you an update on the Greenhouse Seed Company's feeding powder setup. And oh, real quick before I go, just so you know what I'm talking about, I have them right here. I'm crazy. As you can see, this is where I got confused. I used the feeding short flower feeding, and I wasn't thinking when I saw this. I saw that it said mother plants, but on the back of the products they give you the nutrient breakdown. And I feel like an ass for saying this, but if you just read the instructions on how to give nutes to your plants, how to feed your plants with your nutrients, then it's not a problem. I get a lot of people asking questions like how much of this and what type I should use. Really, it's up to the person. It's subjective, but always read the instructions, read the directions on how to apply it. I made the mistake. It happens sometimes, a lot of times, but you know, yeah. So yeah, again, keep fighting the good fight. Happy gardening. I'm out. I've already said that twice. You know who I am and where I'm coming from. So, oh, and thank you all for subscribing and viewing. Appreciate it. You guys keep me fighting. So.